Cristoforo frustrates a lot of people, which is a good thing. He's the type of antagonist that Wuthering Waves really needed. Someone that you can't beat by hitting the enemy real hard real good. With Renzi's disclosure, his notoriety reached an all-time high, but sometimes I feel like people misunderstand what his character is supposed to be. I hear people calling him a bum who doesn't do anything, or how he's just aura farming and claims credit for things he didn't even do, so I'll clear that out first. Then I'll talk about his forte because it's a little complicated. Let's start with his role. He's the Fractsidus overseer, the playwright. Luke says that his codename is Arachnos, which is apparently a Greek word that comes from the word arachne, meaning spider. In a few seconds I will show a picture of a spider, so if you have a fear of them, you can brace yourself a little. The type of spider who uses webs or ambushes to catch prey don't usually go out of their way to hunt. When their prey flies through a web and gets entangled, that's when they strike. It's a bit strange to say this, but a spider doesn't usually do much of anything except for waiting and watching after making their web. The victim does all the work. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? That's because Cristoforo works the exact same way. Unlike the Grand Architect who actually does fieldwork and directly influences events to their favor, as playwright, Cristoforo will absolutely refuse to interfere or directly influence the characters' or actors' decision making. All he's willing to do is to nudge people in the direction that he wants, and then everything else is up to them. Let's take a look at all of his current involvements. Cristoforo suggested a rumor to the Toccatas that there was something interesting regarding Imperator's real form by the rebels on the windmills of Whisperwind Haven, and then left for 20 years. The Toccatas found it and made songs about it, which led them to be banished by pilgrimage, further discouraging discussion on Imperator's real form, as well as ruining the family's reputation. Everything the Toccatas did was due to their own sense of justice. Cristoforo technically didn't influence them to do anything. Ovidius was completely left entirely to his own devices. His eventual fate was something he chose for himself. All Cristoforo did was create him. However, the circumstances behind his creation is a little more unique, so I'll explain that a little more later. Fenrico was determined that he was right in his actions for Raguna. Cristoforo didn't even do anything except ask a few pointed questions and assist with the staffing for the experiments. This was something he would have done regardless if Fenrico was cooperative or not. Rover was nearly driven to death by their own sense of responsibility. All Cristoforo did was remind Rover that the current situation was entirely due to the actions of Renacita's people fighting against the Trinodian that was going to bite back. If anything, Cristoforo's biggest contribution to the Renacita arc was fueling Leviathan with power through the Trinodian's gem during the Gladiator arc. So yes, Cristoforo's actual involvement is very little when you compare him to his fellow co-workers. Styron and Hydra both work in the Human Experimentation, Research and Development Department of the Fractsidus. Scar is just a rabid dog that the GA can throw at people. Frolova can mobilize an entire Tacit Discord army on a whim, and even if Zashiki Warashi's feats are still hidden, they were probably still responsible for Ashinohara's banishment. Even Eris, dubbed Vice Architect, probably manages the Fractsidus' finances. However, Cristoforo understands how people work and think very well. He's able to manipulate people into doing things without mind control, and that's what makes him an interesting antagonist. His workflow is exactly like a spider. Set the trap and watch as the victim brings themselves to ruin. Now let's go over his forte. The effects of his forte can be seen all throughout version 2.4, the Lupa patch, but it's a little hard to conceptualize it, so I'll break it down. Cristoforo is able to overlay a reality with a story of his own. To do so, he needs two things: a story as a foundation for his own story, his adaptation, and an actor who would play in that adaptation. In 2.4, the story Cristoforo used was the story of Mia the Gladiator. Using this as the foundation, he needs to build his adaptation following the original's plotline. This means he can't stray very far from the original story. Mia's story takes place in Septimont, so he can't manifest an unrelated area like New Federation or Raguna City, for example. That goes beyond the scope of his forte. Once the adaptation is done, he just needs to find an actor who can play the role of the protagonist in the original story. In Cristoforo's case, he needs to find a person who lived a life similar to that of Mia's, and in 2.4, that person is Lupa. On the topic of actors, however, we're probably going to have to bring up Nestor and Avidius because they are not real people. Nestor reflects the looser side of his Forte's capabilities, since he's a blind bard that can already plausibly exist in Septimont, and I'm sure Augusta has no shortage of people who share her stories. Cristoforo's Forte was also amplified to an extent by using the Threnodian Leviathan's power, which was how Avidius was created. The Hero of Heroes story is a well-recited legend around Septimont, so creating or finding an actor to serve as the protagonist of that story would have been remarkably difficult. However, the Dark Tide excels in altering the memories and cognitions of others. Avidius was never a person that actually existed, so it would have been a really hard ask if he just showed up one day as a really high-ranking general with multiple heroic level feats. With the Dark Tide, Cristoforo can just essentially lie to people and say, yeah, Avidius really existed, he did all that, and everyone would just nod and agree. Lastly, let's address the all according to plan thing. People were frustrated at him for claiming credit in Renacita when he did relatively little, but if you paid attention so far, he's perfectly right to be saying this. The Fractsidus so far hasn't had a plan that involved the direct destruction of a region, and are more trying to answer questions. Could a Threnodian be forcibly awakened? In Jinzhou, Overthrax was awakened ahead of schedule thanks to Frolova flooding the region with tacit discords. Is the second resonance awakening just a theory? In Mount Firmament, Jinshi's awakening proves this to be a fact. Could the Threnodian's resonator exist? Cartithia's existence proves this to be true. Can a Threnodian's power be harnessed? Through experimentation on Mia, Cristoforo made use of the Threnodian gem on multiple occasions, primarily in Septimont. Can a Threnodian be negotiated with? Even if it was only momentary, Leviathan worked with the Fractsidus. Can a resonator be created or groomed for the express purpose of resonating with a Threnodian? With Denia, this is now a proven fact. The win condition for the Fractsidus is that these questions are answered, regardless if the results benefits them or not, and that directly influences what they do next. It's impossible for the Fractsidus to quote-unquote lose. As long as they get information, then they win. Even the destruction or collapse of a region is just a bonus to them. Anyway, that's all I got for Cristoforo and also the Fractsidus. Maybe I'll talk about the Denia segue next. Don't know. But thanks for watching despite my horrendous upload schedule after uploading consistently for like a month. It'll happen again. Also, I put something in the comment section. Kuro gave me like 10 codes for 30 asteroids, so in the comments, go put down your favorite Fractsidus member and why. Though the only reasonable candidates are Cristoforo, Grand Architect, Frolova, and Scar. I'll pick out 10 of my favorites and then I'll figure out how to distribute them later. Go check the comments though. Alright, thank you, please subscribe, thank you, bye.